Have you ever found a piece of software, maybe an audio plugin or something, that just completely changed how you work? Like not just a little upgrade, but something that felt genuinely different, revolutionary even.
Well, that's exactly what we're getting into today. We're doing a deep dive on Room360. It's an audio plugin, and people, actual users, are calling it special, unique, revolutionary. Now look, advanced audio stuff can get super complex, right? So our mission here is to unpack why. Why is Room360 getting this kind of intense praise? We'll look at the tech, sure, but also how they somehow make all this advanced physics stuff, well, usable for everyone. Kind of counterintuitive.
It really is. And, the creators themselves, they're promising unparalleled acoustic realism. They're calling it an industry first. That's a high bar.
Honestly, I was a bit skeptical myself until I really looked into how they're doing it.
Right. So to figure that out, we've looked at Room360's own website, checked out a popular plugin deal site where it got a lot of buzz, and watched a pretty detailed tutorial video. Okay, let's unpack this. First off, what is Room360? They define it as an advanced spatialization and acoustics plugin. Okay, standard enough. But the bit that jumped out at me was calling it a fully simulated acoustic sandbox. That phrase, sandbox, really hints at something more interactive, more real, maybe. What does fully simulated actually mean here?
It means they're serious about the physics. They state it's built on a principled approach. No cutting corners, no cheating, as they put it. Think about how much processing power it takes to calculate every single sound reflection bouncing around a room in real time. It's huge. Most plugins use, well, let's call them algorithmic shortcuts. Clever math tricks to mimic reflections. They can sound okay, sometimes really good, but often lack that organic complexity of a real space. Room360's approach, using traced reflections, isn't just marketing speak. It means it's actually doing the hard math, like simulating the physics. Every little detail you hear, the nuances, it all comes directly from calculating hundreds of thousands of traced reflections, and they're rendering this in real time with careful optimization. That's a massive technical lift. It's really the engine driving that realism people are talking about.
Okay, that's genuinely incredible, doing all that complex math in real time. But my first thought is, does all that power make it impossible to use? Sometimes the most powerful tools have the steepest learning curve. How does Room360 make this practical for someone just trying to, make music or design sound? Well, from what we saw, the interface seems key. It's got this really intuitive click and drag thing going on. You're not just turning knobs, you're literally moving virtual objects. You can easily reposition and rearrange sound sources and microphones in space. So you get direct control over stuff like distance, angle, and stereo depth of field. It sounds more like you're, setting up a real recording session inside your computer.
Exactly. And that intuitive design translates directly into some really powerful real-world applications. Like you want to pan a sound, you just drag the source left or right relative to where the virtual mics are, and it gets cooler. You can actually rotate sources to simulate directionality. So imagine you have a voice source. You can turn it so it's facing away from the mics, and guess what? It sounds quieter, more muffled, exactly like someone turning their back in a real room. It's physical modeling of the sound interaction, not just digital effects layered on top.
Okay, right. The click and drag makes it accessible.
Okay.
Got it. But here's where it gets really interesting, especially for the pros listening, the folks who obsess over the tiny details. This plugin seems to go way deeper, doesn't it? What's the really granular stuff?
Oh, absolutely. This is where the principled approach really shines. It uses real-life data for modeling full-spectrum, angle-dependent pickup, and emission patterns. What that means is, when you choose a microphone model in Room360, it behaves just like the real thing. It's not just a label. They've included meticulously modeled options. You've got a true Omni zero-bias pattern Omni mic. You've got the classic SM57 cardioid, the SM58 supercardioid, with its tighter pattern, those two loads, and even the bidirectional NT2A, which is great for capturing sound both in front of and behind the mic, like in an interview setup. The accuracy across frequencies and angles is, well, pretty remarkable. And then, there's the very special stuff, the asymmetrical left and right ear pair transfer function. These are designed specifically for binaural simulation to get pretty decent spatialization, making sounds appear to come from specific directions around your head when listening on headphones. To make that work best, you place the virtual mics approximately a head's length apart, and get this, you can even simulate a head by putting a small virtual wall between them. There's also a view band dial, so you can actually see these complex polar patterns visually. For audio pros, this level of data-driven detail is huge. It's part of why they might call it revolutionary.
Wow, okay. So if you put all that together,
The traced reflections, the drag and drop, the super detailed mics, the ear simulation. What does it all mean for the user? It sounds like you're not just slapping on some reverb. You're actually constructing an entire acoustic space from scratch, like a sound architect. Was that fair?
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, exactly. The atmospheric modeling feature lets you build all sorts of environments. Think grand concert halls, echoing cathedrals, or even just intimate studios and long hallways. You get complete control over the number and placement of walls. But then, you asked about the details. What about the air itself? Impressively, Room360 actually includes the ISO standard for atmospheric absorption over distance. You can adjust parameters like altitude, temperature, and humidity.
Wait, humidity? Seriously, can you actually hear the difference humidity makes?
Okay, maybe not on a single drum hit, right? But think about really long reverb tails. A 10-second reverb decay means that sound wave has effectively traveled like 30 kilometers through the air. Over that distance, atmospheric absorption affected by humidity and temperature becomes very real, especially for high frequencies. It does make a difference. Now, is every user going to notice it on every sound? Probably not, but, as one source put it, for the nerds find it important. It's proof of that commitment to realism, that principled approach.
Okay, that's seriously nerdy in the best ways. You build the room shape, you factor in the air. What about the walls themselves? Can you change what they're made of, acoustically speaking?
You absolutely can. That's the wall surface modeling. It gives you complete control over the per-frequency acoustic response of each wall, and that includes scattering how sound diffuses off the surface. So you can add, delete, resize, and drag walls, change their positions, and tweak their reflectivity across different frequencies. And this is crucial because acoustics, even the subtle stuff you don't consciously register as echoes, gives your brain vital clues. It's how you know a sound is far away versus just quiet. These subtle cues make a simulation believable. Your brain processes the room's size and materials implicitly.
That makes sense. It's about building the entire sonic picture, which leads to something else that seems really unique about Room360's workflow.
Yeah.
It kind of throws out a standard convention for plugins, right?
It does, and it's a bold move, honestly. It's
Yeah.
about the wet-dry mix, how much of the effect, the reverb you blend in. Most plugins have a knob or a slider for that, right? Mix, 0 to 100%. Room360 doesn't.
No wet knob
Ugh.
at all. How do you control the reverb level then?
You do it physically within the simulation. It's achieved by changing microphone proximity to the source. You literally move the virtual microphone closer to the sound source for less reverb or further away for more. It's fundamental to their whole simulation philosophy. It forces you, or maybe encourages you, to think more like a real recording engineer, placing mics in a room, understanding how distance affects the sound naturally, rather than just tweaking a digital blend control.
That's a completely different way of thinking for a plug-in user. It really drives home that point from the sources, that Room360 isn't just all of these features individually, but it's the whole package. It's this integrated simulation-first approach that seems to deliver that extra level of acoustic realism. You start to see why people are using words like revolutionary. It genuinely changes the interaction. And, okay, we have to talk about the elephant in the room or maybe the deal in the room. A huge factor in why this feels so special and revolutionary to so many users, especially maybe those newer to audio, has got to be the price point it was offered at. It wasn't just about the tech, it was about access.
Absolutely. That was clearly a major factor in his popularity and the revolutionary buzz. This wasn't cheap tech conceptually, but the deal made it accessible. The original price was listed as $99, which for this level of simulation isn't outrageous, but then they offered a 75% off-F deal. 75%. That brought the price down to just $24. $24. And it was a limited time offer, so it created that urgency, that feeling of getting incredible value, a premium simulation tool for basically an entry-level price.
Yeah, $24 is kind of unbelievable for what we've been describing. And it wasn't just a temporary license either, was it? The value proposition was even better. It was a buy once, own forever license, plus free updates and free support.
Right. That kind of long-term commitment from the developer adds huge value.
Combine that incredible deal with the tech we've discussed, and then you see the user ratings 4.7 out of 5.0 based on 21 reviews on that deal site. It all paints a picture. Innovation, usability, and incredible value. That combo feels pretty revolutionary in itself. Okay, so wrapping this up. Room360 is getting called revolutionary because, one, its core tech is built on actually simulating physics, those traced reflections, no shortcuts. Two, it gives you this crazy level of control, placing mics precisely, building detailed environments, even tweaking the air and the walls. And three, its whole approach is different.
That intuitive interface, and especially ditching the wet-dry knob for physical mic placement, it forces a more simulation-based, almost real-world way of thinking about sound design.
Yeah, I think this deep dive really shows how it managed to hit a sweet spot. It caters, like the source said, to the nerds, people who love the deep science, the atmospheric absorption details, but it also works incredibly well for beginners or people who just want great sound without needing an engineering degree. Thanks to that intuitive, physically based interaction, it bridges that gap really effectively.
So thinking about everything we've unpacked here, what stands out most to me about this approach to audio realism? What's the most compelling part for you? And here's something maybe to chew on after listening. How does using a tool that makes you physically place microphones in a virtual space instead of just turning knobs fundamentally change how you think as a creator? Does it make you more like an engineer or maybe even an architect of sound rather than just, a button pusher?